This chapter is called Developing Through the Lifespan, and it is part of a field of psychology called developmental psychology. And developmental psychology examines how people are continually developing physically, cognitively, socially from infancy, from the moment they're born to old age. So we start this chapter talking about conception. And so let's have a discussion about how this works, even though you're probably saying, I know how babies are born, but let's talk about it in its scientific manner. So what we have is the woman's ovary, all right, releases a mature egg. And this egg, which happens, once a month, is actually the size of a period at the end of a sentence. All right, and so what happens is the egg is released and the sperm will try to get to that egg. 200 million sperm are going to race to that egg, hoping to be the one to get to the Holy Grail, okay? And what happens is when one of the sperm break through the outer coating of the egg gets a protective coating around itself. So when one gets in, the others are blocked. Before half the day is over, when the egg and the sperm become one, that egg nucleus and the sperm nucleus have fused. Only 1 out of 200 million made you. That's quite amazing, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing. So, what happens when that sperm gets to the egg? The sperm itself releases a digestive enzyme that will eat away the egg's coating. So that's how the one gets in, and once that happens, the egg itself releases a protective coating to not let any others in. But there is a little codicil to that. If the ovary releases 2 eggs, you may end up with twins, okay? Not identical twins, because that would be 1 egg that splits into 2 to have the same genetic material, but this would be 2 separate eggs. It could be 3, it could be 4, depending, but each one of those eggs does not turn into 2, it does not split, and so those eggs, those twins, are fraternal twins. They're just like brother and sister in the womb, or brother and brother, sister and sister, unlike the identical twin, which is 1 egg that splits, monozygotic twins, and they will carry the exact same genetic material. All right, so those fertilized eggs are called zygotes. Zygotes. You could say it either way. Zygotes. We're going to call it zygotes. So fewer than half of those zygotes will survive the first 2 weeks. So women get technically pregnant very often and have absolutely no idea that it ever happened, because half of them will survive only. So the first week, okay, you start with 1 cell. Remember, that's the sperm uniting with the egg. They create 1 cell. That first week, that 1 cell will divide to 100 cells. And these cells then differentiate in structure and function. Okay, all right. So what happens is uh, that sperm, let me just add this, it's not in the book, but that sperm, the egg actually develops in the woman's fallopian tube. So the sperm, it really is quite a journey because it has to go up into the fallopian tube. And then when the two are united, that cell has to travel down and it's dividing as it's going to implant itself into the uterine wall. So 10 days, it takes 10 days after conception, that zygote will attach itself to the mother's uterine wall, and at that time, it will become an embryo. Okay, so initially the fertilized egg is called a zygote. 10 days after conception, the zygote will attach itself to the mother's uterine wall, where it then becomes an embryo. Okay, and over the next 6 weeks, organs form and start to function. The heartbeat, it's like amazing. And then at the next point, 9 weeks out, the embryo starts to look human, and it's now called a fetus. And that is Latin for offspring, young one. So remember, fertilized eggs are called zygotes. All right, 10 days after conception, the zygote will have traveled through and attached itself to the mother's uterine wall, and then becomes the embryo, and it's the embryo for over the next 6 weeks. And then at 9 weeks, that embryo starts to look human, and it is now called a fetus. And that is 37 weeks it will take to come to term. And during the first 6 months, the organs will have developed enough to give the premature fetus a chance of survival. And this is called the age of viability. Okay? So at each prenatal stage, genetic and environmental factors will affect the development of the child. So if you're living in a place that may have toxic waste, that could affect the fetus. If you get a virus, that could affect the development of the child, the fetus. Uh, we call things that will break through the placenta, okay? And that placenta is formed as the zygote cells attached to the uterine wall, and that placenta is transferring nutrients and oxygen from mother to fetus. And that placenta also will screen out harmful substances. But, okay, developmentally, some of those harmful substances, which could be the toxic waste, which could be a virus, or which could be a drug, if the mother is addicted to methamphetamine, okay, they will get by. And these are called teratogens. Teratogens. These are viruses, drugs, drinks. They get through the placenta and they will affect the development of that child. So they may grow up and have developmental disabilities, illnesses, there's a wide variety of things that could happen. 1 in 800 of these infants will, could have, I should say, could have fetal alcohol syndrome. Okay, and that's from mothers drinking while they are pregnant. And of course, this runs from birth defects to intellectual and developmental disabilities. So teratogens. Very important word for you to remember. All right, so we're going to stop here and then we're going to pick up at newborns.